back to the Ask Dr. Renee show here at blackdoctor.org. I am your host, of course, Ask Dr. Renee. And today we have a really great show, but you know I have to do my housekeeping first. So I was in the middle of typing my message to you guys. Please let us know where you are watching from. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always type them in the chat and I will try and get them answered for you by our guest today. Secondly, my favorite thing, sharing is caring. Please share the broadcast because if this information is not helpful to you, it may be helpful to someone you're related to or a friend of yours, someone on your, one of your Facebook friends or somebody that looks at your YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever. So wherever you're watching, please share the broadcast because this is going to be great information for someone, I promise. Okay. So today is the first show for April, and April is known as Autism Awareness Month. And recently I read somewhere they're no longer calling it that. They're calling it Autism. I'm going to have to ask my guests because I'm sure they know. It's something, not Awareness Month, but something else. But we want to keep spreading the word. It's, yes, they have a month, but it's every day of the year for a lot of these people, particularly the two people we have on today. And so I want to make sure that we continue to spread the word so that people are aware, so that we can get diagnosis early, because we'll talk about why that's important. And particularly for our community, which always seems to get the shaft on things and finding out things later, we want to be the first. So that's why we want to give you this information so you can be a parent, friend, aunt, uncle, whatever, and say, hey, I think so-and-so might need to be tested or something. So that's what we're talking about today. So please, please, please share the broadcast. We have some amazing guests. So share, share, share. Sharing is caring. So my guests today are Dr. Tisa Johnson-Hooper, who you have seen here before. She was so gracious to come and talk with us a couple years ago about autism. And she is the director of the Autism Center in Detroit, Michigan. So even if you're not in Detroit, she still might be able to give you some help on people to talk to wherever you're located. So please don't tune out because she's in Detroit. And then we have Meelah, who I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. Meelah is one of the members of 702, as well as she was on the show R&B Divas, and she's just an amazing mom to little Zach, and who's no longer little anymore, and I'm feeling quite old, but we are going to hear her story, and Dr. Hooper is going to give us great information to help all of us, to help each other with autism. So thank you guys so much for being with me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Good evening. Hi, Dr. Tisa.
So Meelah, let's start with you and tell us about Zach and when he was born and what you noticed that made you say, hey.
So my story is pretty unique and it's so long. Well, I tend to be very long-winded about this with this story. So I'm gonna try and give it to you guys quickly. So I often tell people that, because there's a lot of misconceptions. I don't want to say misconceptions, but a lot of different theories from where autism comes from, right? So in my case, I was 2 weeks past my due date, which is not uncommon, but unfortunately for me, it brought about some trauma for Zach's entrance into the world. I was about 42 weeks pregnant, 10 months pregnant, and he just wouldn't come out. And so they had to break my water, and once they did, they realized it was green. He had a bowel movement while inside of me. So they instantly were like, oh my goodness, because he was born pretty much with lack of oxygen to the brain, hence the delays in the future, right? So because he had the bowel movement, the actual medical term is meconium aspiration. He wasn't breathing when he came out because his lungs were pretty much full to capacity from his feces. So they weren't functioning. And so fast forward, he had to be rushed to a whole nother hospital, totally different side of town. I couldn't go with him. I had just gotten this emergency C-section. So I had to lay there for 4 days before I even saw my child. But thank God, he was rushed to a children's hospital here in Atlanta, Children's Hospital of Atlanta, and was put on an ECMO machine, which served as a respirator of sorts and acted as his lung. They paralyzed him, which meant they sedated him. He had morphine and all kinds of drugs from birth, which I also attribute to his being delayed. And was in the hospital in the NICU for about 2.5 months before he came home. And so Zach was babbling and crawling all around the same, no average age that most babies do. So I thought everything was fine. But once he turned about 1.5, his pediatricians noticed he wasn't really saying mama or dada, and they felt like that was a little bit of a red flag, if you will. And so we started early intervention, which helped Zach and and his dad a lot, because we started early intervention per the suggestion of his pediatricians, and got him into speech therapy, occupational therapy before the age of 2. And so by the time he was diagnosed, we kind of went backwards. We saw the signs before because of the trauma that he, entered into this world with. So we started with the therapies first, and then by the time he was in pre-K, we went ahead and got the diagnosis. So he was diagnosed at age 4 with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and global development delay. I think that's it. Yeah. And we just turned 15. They said that he had a 90% chance at death, a 10% chance at life. They called me in the hospital while I was still there healing, saying that, Ms. Williams, we just want to let you know your baby may not make it. They did not expect him to make it. And by the grace of God, he's still here. And so he is definitely my miracle child, seriously, because they really did not expect him to live. That's how intense his situation was.
Wow. So at 15, is he in regular school, or does he? Because I'll say the last guest we had, he was in regular school, but he had somebody that went around with him to his classes and stuff.
Yep. So we're still in the public school system here, which I'm grateful. Where I live, my county has really great schools, public schools. He's been in the public school system here since pre-K. They had a pre-K at an elementary school this is even before his diagnosis, for developmentally delayed pre-K children. And so he started with that program first, and then they didn't have an autism program. So then he had to go to a different elementary school, but he stayed at the same elementary school, K-5, for the autism special education program. And he's been in that same program in the same cluster, elementary, middle school, now high school. So it's a public school, but it's ASD level 2 special education. And they're like 1 teacher, 2 paras, and like 5 kids. 8, I think that his biggest class has been 8 students. And yes, they always have someone with him at all times.
Wow, that is so wonderful, because I know a lot of people struggle with their schools not being supportive. So,
sure, it's tough. It is. Yeah,
I can imagine.
I'm comfortable though. So far, I've not really had any major issues. I stay on top of his IEP. They're always pretty accommodating. I had one issue when he was in pre-K, where I kind of asked the teacher if she kind of would help me with potty training, and she was like, "Well, just because you added it to his IEP doesn't mean that I'm going to have to do it." Yikes. Now, mind you, he's 3 or 4, and this was something that I was told, like, "Hey, if there's anything you need to add, like, let them know. You have that parental right." She was some sassy little young 20-something-year-old, honey, but thankfully, he got potty trained at age 5, which to me, with him being on the spectrum, was incredible. So I was happy about that. And we're not on any medication. We don't have any real behavioral issues, thank God. He's not physical. He's not violent, thank God. And I'm grateful for that. He's still very much delayed with his comprehension and his language. He still doesn't fully talk. Well, he's not a mute, so he's not nonverbal, but he's very limited verbal. He still is unable to have a back and forth banter, if you will, like a communicative back and forth exchange. He knows things that we've taught him and that he's retained, but he doesn't know how to have just a flow of conversation.
Okay.
He's come a long way. So I'm grateful.
Yes. Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
A long way. Yeah.
So Dr. Hooper, can you take us back to the beginning and explain exactly what is autism spectrum disorder?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you, even for those family members, parents who have children with autism, and professionals, this is a diagnosis that sometimes can be very elusive, right? Because when you meet one person with autism, you've met that one person, because the next person is going to look completely different. That's what makes it so difficult of a diagnosis. So I always try to explain to my families, when you think of autism, you think of 2 areas where there are issues that you're looking for. The first area is a qualitative impairment like in social interaction and social communication. The next bucket is the presence of behaviors. So like specifically what we look at for that social communication and social interaction is deficits in like that social reciprocity, that back and forth, give and take in communication. And it doesn't have to be verbal, just even nonverbal, back and forth, give and take. We look for a qualitative impairment in the nonverbal communications. So if you think about going through your day with like tape over your mouth and you can't talk, you're going to have those nonverbals. You're going to nod, you're going to gesture. That's all nonverbal. You'll direct your eye contact to the person you're talking to. That's nonverbals. Direct a smile. Those are all nonverbals that may be a qualitative impairment. And I stress that, meaning it's not yes or no. You may have, a child with autism may have these skills, but you're not seeing it with the frequency that you would expect to see for a kiddo their age. And so a lot of parents will say, yeah, my kid pointed, but it's not for social purposes. And then the other area under that basket is a qualitative impairment in initiating and maintaining social relationships, like making a friend and keeping a meaningful, long-standing friendship. So that's what that social interaction, social communication piece is. Then that next bucket is the presence of certain behaviors. The first behaviors are like stereotypical behaviors. That's the hand flapping, toe walking, body grimacing, hand mannerisms. Those all go under stereotypical behaviors. And keep in mind, a child with autism doesn't have all of them, right? You may just have one, not all of them, but stereotypical behaviors. Kids with autism oftentimes have repetitive, restricted behaviors. So repetitive behaviors like jumping, pacing, just doing something or repetitive verbalizations, repetitive play. Meelah, things sound familiar. Yeah, yes. You may see like hyper sensitivities or hyposensitivities. So over response to sound, light, textures, smell. Some children then have sensory seeking. So they're doing a lot of body pressing, trying to get that, tactile stimulation, holding things up to their ears to hear, looking into light, smelling various objects. So that's an aspect. And those are those only two buckets. I want to stress, autism is not a cognitive impairment. Now, some children with autism do have that co-occurring cognitive impairment, but you don't. You can have a cognitive impairment, you can have a typical or an average IQ, or you could have a genius IQ and still have a diagnosis of autism because you're just looking at that qualitative impairment in social communication and social interaction and the presence of those restricted repetitive behaviors, activities, and interests. Yeah. I still think it's a difficult diagnosis to wrap one's head around, but I try to, it's really just
it's
those
so broad.
It's very broad. And it's a spectrum because you don't have to have every single one of those, right? And you could have something a little bit more, a little bit less of the others. And then when you have children with different language abilities and different IQs, now they even look different, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
It's so
wow. So how
my mom is
go ahead.
All on the spectrum.
What'd you say? Your mom what?
My mother used to always joke and say, I think we're all on the spectrum. I think we all have some sense of, being on the spectrum and some way or another. And I mean, I gotta say that she may have been right, because like Dr. said, it's so broad. It really is. It's just really, and no one's alike. No two people are alike. So
definitely
it's highly possible.
So how early can autism be diagnosed in children?
So in Josie, you can see signs of autism before the age of 12 months. You really can. Early diagnosis, is around 18 months, for diagnosis. We definitely see disparities in the timing and the age of diagnosis by race. Black children are diagnosed later than our white children. But if we are doing our job right, and it takes a village, meaning awareness in the community, believe it or not, even awareness in the primary care provider because there's still a lot of providers that are not aware of the diagnosis. And if we actually implement what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends around developmental surveillance and developmental screening, we can pick those kids up earlier, as early as 18 months.
And what exactly would they be looking for, parents and providers as well?
So, so there's red flags of autism. And so as a pediatrician, what's really kind of interesting, I have medical students and learners with me all the time. And I always talk to them about when we go into a well visit at 6 months, at 9 months, at 12 months. Developmental surveillance, why I use that word out. Let me just quickly say, like, surveillance, that is what every provider does when they walk into a room and they ask the parent the question, hey, any concerns about, your child's development, behavior, or health? That open-ended question is a part of surveillance, because I'm waiting to hear from a parent say, yeah, I'm concerned he's not talking too much. Or they may say, no, I don't have any concerns. But that's a part of surveillance. And it's also my clinical observation. I'm looking to see that interaction between the child and the parent. I'm looking to see what that child's interaction is like with me. For a patient that I carry, that I have in my practice, I'm looking at protective factors and risk factors that impact a child's development. Then developmental screening, specifically for autism at 18 or 24 months, is a way to identify those red flags. Those two things together should help me identify those children who are at risk of autism that I can then refer for evaluation. So specific to your question, what are things that are concerning for me? It's like no babbling before by the age of 12 months. What I will do when I walk into a room at 9 months, every 9-month-old child really at this point should start to mirror their parents' expression when they see a stranger. They should, like when I walk in the room, they'll look at me and immediately a 9-month-old that has a typical development will turn and they'll look at their caregiver. And then they'll look back at the doctor. That's called joint attention. A child with autism typically doesn't. They may, I may walk into the room, but they never have that joint attention. They don't close that gap. And that's a subtlety that I always look for. Now, there are other reasons why kids may not do it. They may not have a bond with their caregiver. Like if mom has depression and is not there for the child, or if the child, there's just many reasons. But that is something that I want to see, that child referencing their caregiver through the assessment. And that's a subtlety, quite honestly, that I look for. And I have picked up kids that really aren't doing that when I'm examining them, and all kids don't want to be touched, right? If they're crying, but they're not directing that eye contact to the parent, but they're just kind of crying out there, that's a concerning red flag. So there are those subtleties based on my observation, but definitely if they're not babbling, if there's no social referencing by 9 or 12 months, that is a concern. And I'm always going to ask parents about how is Snuggly communicating with you? Because even if they don't have words, there should be some communicative intent with a nice point. So if they're not pointing, if the eye contact, isn't directed, those are all red flags to me for autism.
Okay.
That's so
And if you have any questions, please, Meelah, ask her. She is, as you see, quite the resource.
Well, I'm just listening because it's so interesting from the things that she said, with children now versus when Zach was born 15 years ago. I was recently looking at the numbers. The statistics have changed immensely, which is so crazy to me. I think it was like 1 in 88. Every 1 in 88 children when Zach was born in 2009, and now it's 1 in 36.
1 in 36, yes. 1 in 36.
Yeah. And Zach never pointed. It took him years. He probably just started 2 years ago, and he's 15. Mm-hmm. He had some of the stereotypical things you were talking about. He always looked me in the eyes from a baby. We kind of go through that more now that he's older versus when he was younger. We had the eye contact. It's so interesting. But the pointing was not there. So there's kind of like there's this like blankness, right? It's like this blank stare, if you will, like with children with developmental issues. There's no emotional connection. And when I was a new mom, I thought it was me. Like I couldn't feel the connection. I'm like, why isn't he connecting with me? He was tube fed in the hospital because, of course, he was sedated and couldn't, eat aside from a tube. So I had to go to the hospital every night and take him my breast milk. But when he came home, I had to use like a tube to feed him. And I'm like, no, I refuse. You are going to learn how to breastfeed because I just wanted to feel connected since I had missed out on his first 2 months, you know?
Yeah.
Thankfully, he took the nipple guard and he caught it. Thank God. But I still, as he got older, there was like an empty. I remember telling his dad, I'm like, I don't know, he just doesn't seem like he's into me. And he was like 9 months, 10 months. So the thought of autism hadn't even crossed my mind. So to hear you break it down, like it's like, wow, so that's what it was. You know what I mean?
And it's hard though, because I think your son had such a hard beginning, right? And there was reasons for him to have those delays. So quite honestly, for children like that, it is, you know, like this is my jam, my specialty. I love children with special healthcare needs. So I'm like all in, you know, in their space. And so, but I could see it's hard though, because when you have a developmental delay and autism, so many things overlap. You know, it takes some time to, you know, to kind of clarify because I would see that he may have some delays in his gross motor, fine motor, language, but but the one thing, even though that very rough start, it should not account for is that social piece, that social reciprocity. That is the autism piece. You know, so that's the whole piece kind of tease out.
We're working on, he's an only child and he's very comfortable being by himself. But you know, the older he gets, I definitely want him to interact a little more. He does okay with his friends at school, but he's a one-man band, you know, like
I love that.
He does not want to be bothered. He doesn't like physical touch, you know, he doesn't like to hug. He's not very emotional, affectionate rather. You know, but the things you mentioned with the repetitive stuff and he holds his iPod up to his ear constantly, and it's so loud. I'm like, I know you hear that. Things over and over and over, and I'm like, oh my God, if I hear that one more time. But I kind of gotten so used to it now that I'm almost like accustomed to it. So like, I don't even recognize it sometimes. But gosh, now that he's 15, you know, it's interesting to watch the things he's grown out of. But then sometimes there's things that I see I don't know if the word is regressed or not, but he'll start doing some past behaviors that he maybe once stopped, you know, doing. And then I'm like, when did you start doing that again? You know, it's just interesting to watch. The language, to your point, he's thinking about it. Like I can tell he wants to say the words, or when I ask him a question, he's trying so hard to verbalize it. But it's like he cannot figure out how to connect the dots to articulate that sentence and formulate that sentence. You know?
Does he use any type of augmented communication device or picture board, something like that?
No. And you know, we just had his IEP meeting, and I always ask them their thoughts on that, and they're like, "Oh, Zach does not need that at all." They're like, "Zach can talk. Zach has." It's like pulling teeth. He just refuses. I don't know what it is. His teachers come to me and say, well, he's talking less this week. And I'm like, I'm his mother. I've been going through this for 15 years. I don't know what to tell you. Because he sings all day long and he imitates movies all day long. Okay. He loves acting out scenes. When it comes to him having to articulate his wants and needs, he's shut down. And so I'm not sure what that is, but there's like a gap. There's a gap.
Well, the repeating songs or like acting stuff out, that is a stereotype behavior, right? That's echolalia and that's scripting. And scripting, so
yes.
Yeah. But you know what? I'll tell you, the one reason I love doing what I'm doing, I work in a multidisciplinary clinic. I keep learning from the colleagues that I work with, and the speech pathologists have taught me so much over the years, particularly around the echolalia. And now speech pathologists are really looking at that and embracing it and using that as a foundation for language development. It's called Gestalt learning, you know? And so that is something that if he's doing it, maybe, you know, speaking to speech pathologist, how can leverage this?
Stop with that. We don't do that as much. Thank God. We stopped with that years ago. But the scripting went on. The scripting went on for quite some time, and it's still sometimes now. But that echolele used to run me nuts.
Yeah.
He did do that for a while when he was younger. But like that's what I mean
Yeah.
by some things I've seen him grow out of. You know what I mean? Like he grew
Yeah.
out of that. Now he stems a whole lot, and he didn't used to stem as much when he was younger. And now that he's older, he stems with his hands. He flat. You know, his dad's so silly. His dad says he's throwing up gang signs. We just we make light of it.
Never know.
I'm like, whatever. We got stands for Jesus. Don't put my baby in the game. But he does it so much, and so his teacher was recently telling me. She said, "Listen, what I tell him is when it's time out for that, I'll just say, hey Zach." She said, "Quiet hands." So she's like, "Try that at home. You know, quiet hands to get him to just kind of calm down." Because I mean, it's just some mild. He is just going for it. I'm like, when did you start doing this so much? But it started the older he got. So that was interesting too, to see some of the stereotypical things that you mentioned happening in his older years versus when he was younger.
But you also have to keep in mind, so he's older, so his demands have increased, right? There at school, his interaction looks very different today than it did when he was 4, when he was 5.
This is true.
And
in high school,
and so those demands, quite honestly, for all of us, when you get to middle school, high school, it's stressful, right? And so if you have words, to kind of say, hey, this chemistry class or the craziness your friends are doing, you can kind of talk that out. You can come home and decompress a little bit. And if he can't do that, stimming may be a way that he's like, and I don't know, about Zach, but I suspect he's probably doing it more at home than he's doing it at school. He probably tries to hold it together, at school. Then he gets home, he's like, I'm done. And you probably see more people stimming.
Exactly what it is. Yep, that's exactly what it is. We learned that last year. I said that exactly. I do too. I mean, bless his heart. Like you just said, we can have a bad day or whatever and come home and, yell out profanities if we want to. And, he doesn't know how to be expressive. And so I have to give him grace. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, listen, we don't know, what it is to be kind of bottled up, like you said, have tape on our mouths all day. We can talk and be mad and yell and shout to the rafters, but he doesn't have that ability. So you're right. He comes home and that is when he decompresses. At school, he's a very great student according to the teachers, thank God. But he treats me different from how he treats them. Like
they all do.
He doesn't get like he's not like I said, he doesn't have major behavioral issues. However, like you said, he's decompressing, so he's like stimming and loud and TV on 100. And I tell them this at school, and they're like, they can't believe it's the same kid. I'm like, yes. And I'm like, no, he's so quiet at school. They're like, we had to check. It's like, Zach, are you breathing? Are you okay? Because they're like, he's so chill at school. I'm like, not in his room. Not at all. But you just broke it down. That makes so much sense. That's exactly what's happening. He has to decompress. That's a long day for him.
It's a real long day. And I don't know. I am.
So.
And we were talking, earlier about this age group and the unique needs of this age group, and that for all teenagers, this is a process to prepare them for the next stage of their life, adulthood, right? And so I think of, kids that really are holding it together in school and like needing to stem. I don't know, maybe even think of things that could be generally healthy, but a great way to decompress. I don't know, like some people run, some people, they box. I don't know, things that you can do that are healthy for you physically, mentally, that are, kind of appropriate in that space that can help him get through his day, because he's 15, but each year he's gonna face a new challenge, a bigger demand. And that's the goal of adolescence, right? Is for him to grow and learn more skills. So it's having to be helpful.
That's a question I would have for you, Doctor, is the transition with.
And that was what I was going to do next was how should you approach the care and support as evolving as the child grows?
I don't know what to do with that. I talked to his dad, and we're both new parents too. This is our first, we don't know, but he's a young man, and he's 15. In that way, he's very normal. I'm seeing he's attracted to girls. He has emotions and feelings, and and I'm just noticing, and I'm watching like I know we're gonna have a baby. Like I see when his face lights up, when girls come around or what have you, and I'm just like, oh Lord, like. But I don't know what to do with that with a child on the spectrum. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not, we had what did we have in school? We had like sex education and all that good stuff. They don't even. I don't even think that exists anymore. And then especially for children on the spectrum, I don't know that they don't have like anatomy breakdown class or anything like that. I don't think so. I guess it's left up to the parents and the professional.
You know what? I truly think you can take one of two approaches. You could put your head in the sand and go, we'll just get through it. Or you can be proactive. I mean, but you know what? That's what parenting anyway, right? There's not just parenting special needs. Some parents are like, I don't want to, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. That's some approach, But then I think, quite honestly, my focus for any kiddo, 12, 13, really is the age to start thinking about the process of healthcare transition. And all that process means is the planning and the preparation for moving into the adult approach of life, whether it's in healthcare, education, like the legal, vocation, all of that. It's that planning and preparing. And we do that with intention for children generally, but we don't have that intention for children with special healthcare needs, and they need it the most. And so I would think, I'm going to give you a resource for every parent I give. There is a organization called Got Transitions. It's a national resource depository for all information on healthcare transition. And they really do give families and parents very specific information. But things that you can do, you could definitely use social stories. Social stories that talk about changing body, feelings, talks about private and public places of, touch. Like, this is a private place in the home. Your bedroom's private. Right. The kitchen is not a private place. And the living room, not private. Right. That you have to be very, very clear. I've encouraged families to put signs so like kids can be doing, I'm in the family room. This is public, just to kind of remind them, what is good touch? What is bad touch? You may have to list out, these are the people that, can touch or see these private places. These are people that cannot. And you have to write it. But
talk to him about that.
Yeah, and you will just have to be clear. But I love social stories that are just very simple stories with great pictures that you can use to read and just start that conversation, keeping it simple. It's not a long hour conversation. It's like a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Right. That's a bad time. This is a private place. And then just kind of keep it rolling like that with regards to changing body. Because you're right. He's 15. His body is changing. And you can acknowledge that.
Yeah. Well, it started at boys start puberty, 12, 13, so he had questions around then. He didn't know how to ask me, but he would just kind of, so like, okay, the hairs on his arms, the hairs on his legs, he's hairy. So he was pulling stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Everyone gets hair, it's normal. Like I do my best at explaining, like, it's because you're getting bigger and it happens. It's okay. Because, he didn't understand at first. He's like, what is all this on my body all of a sudden, and that was at like 12, 13. So, he's very particular when things are out of order or what have you. And one day he put on his, we were in the jumping place. He loves to go jump. We go to the indoor bouncy house all the time because he's not into athletics. So that's his form of sports for me, his exercise. So we go to the indoor bouncy houses a lot, and he jumps and jumps and jumps and what have you. And I think he had on his shorts backwards, or maybe even, his shorts were backwards, I think. I don't know. And I noticed, and I said, Zach, your shorts are backwards. Like, come on, let's go. Oh, it was bothering him. The tag was bothering him, and he didn't understand why. And it's because he kept coming up. I'm like, what's wrong? So I looked and said, oh, your shorts are backwards. So he proceeded. I said, well, come on, let's go. He was so bothered by it. He proceeded to get ready to pull his shorts down. underwear and all, and to turn them. I'm like, no. And I grabbed him and I said, no. I said, Zach, we have to go to the restroom. You cannot do that. You have to do that in private. And so I have these talks with him. I have his talks with him about his private parts and who should not be touching them and all that. And I do my best with that. I don't know that he comprehends it, but I talk to him about those things constantly because he doesn't know what being touched inappropriately looks like or is, or or understands, which drives me nuts every day. Like I am a nervous wreck every day of my life.
And I think the reality is, I mean, that is something that he'll learn. And the stressful part for me is like, as a pediatrician, as a Black person in my community, I realize that not everybody will have that grace for Black children,
right.
And so that's where always in my mind, I'm always thinking of things of like, what could get them in a position that they're unsafe? How are people going to perceive this and not give them the grace, in this space? And so it's a huge worry. And that's where I lead. And I know most Black families lead, particularly for their Black boys, of like, saying like, this is what you've got to do in public, because nobody's going to give you that grace. And it's a particular stressor, I know.
Well, especially when the comprehension level is that of my son's, which is pretty low. So no matter how much you break it down, he doesn't understand fully what you're even talking about. And so there's that aspect. And then when he's unable to articulate if someone did something to him inappropriately, he doesn't. I have asked him questions several times about just different things. It didn't even have to be anything like sexual or anything, just something basic about what happened at school. And Zach will change his responses 50 times. It's yes, it's no, it's no, it's yes. It's by the end of it, I'm so confused. And I asked the teacher, and she'll hopefully if she was present, then she'll let me know. But he fluctuates his answers because he doesn't really understand, and he's looking like, "What do you want me to say?" He just like, "Let me just say something so she can stop drilling me." You know what I mean? So he'll throw out any answer every time, and I'm like, but that's scary because if there is a 911, bless his heart, he's unable to tell me anything. And this is why I'm such an overprotective helicopter parent. And I'm trying to let him go because he's getting older, and we want to focus on independence. That is the goal, of course. But it's not easy when you're raising a Black boy in this country who's special needs, who is extremely delayed verbally, and who is 15 but has the comprehension of that of maybe a third grader. It depends on the day,
And I think though, when you're talking about preparing for that transition, is thinking of like who are his circle of supports, right? Like who can he go to for the various aspects that he'll need in life? And that'll evolve and change. But this is a perfect time to start kind of looking around and see who is in your community. And that could be a teacher.
It's necessary.
Now I know in Michigan, because I had a friend who had a sibling that went through, there was a program, and it was with the public schools too, and it was after high school, but it taught like, self-care things like, washing clothes and all of those things so that they could help with independence. Are these common programs?
So they are through public schools, like with for children that are not going for their high school diploma, can extend education through age 26, and so they're still in school through 26. And typically it's, whether it's vocation training, life skills training. So that is something through, when you think of like, in my mind, I think of like, what's a care plan map, that care map. So that education piece, but also for children with autism, I would even look and tap into like a BCBA, look at ABA programs, like someone who has particular interest in working with older kids with autism, because there's a lot of ABA programs for the little people, but for the older kid, it really is teaching and reinforcing those life skills. whether it's cooking, cleaning, just and riding a bus, money skills, all those type of things. And so that can be done outside. And then, when you're thinking of, other things, the school will have their plan. I always think like, what are other things you can do to kind of augment it that really focus in it. And so even like a speech therapist could help with those social communication life skills for that older kiddo would be something I would, look to plan into. I'm constantly always thinking of like that next step. And I think for me, I know it makes a parent like say, gosh, I can't enjoy the now, but growing up, so I'm constantly, where do you want him to land? What are those skills he needs? So we have to work on it today. So when he gets to that next level, he has, some of those skills.
Yeah.
And it is a challenge.
Yeah. Because he's at that age. He'll be 18 in the morning. Like it's going to go. He's already 15. So yeah, you have to start working on all of that stuff. So they do go at his school. They have community skills every week. It started out just one day a week when he was in elementary and middle, but now in high school, it's twice a week. They have to go out and do, so it's called community skills. So they practice counting money and ordering on their own and getting their change. And they go to Walmart, Target, different stores. Yeah, different stores. And they have a little clipboard and they're supposed to write down like how much things cost and stuff like that. It's part of the curriculum. Like they have to do it. That's been since third grade. I think they started.
That is beautiful. Mm-hmm. That is beautiful.
That is wonderful.
Zach does not necessarily enjoy it. He does not like it. He likes the part where I allow him to eat Burger King with them. That's why he gets to eat fast food that day. So, but I love that part of the program. I was so nervous at first because in my mind, I'm like, why are they taking them away from the school? No, don't leave the school. Don't even go to Walmart. No. And I used to try to go. They were like, sorry, Ms. Williams, like this is part of the curriculum. So it's like technically part of school. So you can't show. I was trying to follow the bus. Okay. But I'm used to it now. Like even doing this since third grade now. So I love that part of school because it's so necessary. Now that he's in high school, they've implemented more stuff now that he's in high school to get them prepared for after school. So they have to, I know they have tasks that they have to do. They fold towels and distribute them to different classes. Like they have little chores at school that they have to do. And we just added to his IAP recently. I just had his meeting last month and I added chores at home. Working on folding clothes and working on, he makes his bed every day now. He does a great job. I don't even have to tell him anymore. I'm so proud of him because that comforter used to look a raggedy mess. And now it is so straight. He has figured out how to straighten it. And I showed him how to, shake out the pillows. And so his pillows are straight. I'm just proud that he learned that pretty quickly and that I don't have to like repeat myself because I got to repeat myself with so many other things. But with that, he just does it on his own. And I'm so proud of him for that. Like he really just makes up his bed. But we have a lot more to learn, but we're getting there,
You definitely are. I mean, honestly, you need to give yourself some grace in that most kids don't make their beds. I'm right. You, so
what are you talking about, kids? There's adults that do not
make their bed.
Right. Yeah, right.
So I mean, it's showing that he is demonstrating. Yeah, he's demonstrating some wonderful self-help skills. This is an amazing step. You definitely.
We have a lot to go, but I think that's a great step. We're still working on tying shoes. We're still working on tying his shoes, and
that's what? Tough. That's why they're Velcro shoes. I mean, honestly,
let me tell you something. Listen.
Seriously, and now they have the Velcro ones that look like they're tied.
Yes, here's my biggest advice: pick your battles.
Pick your battles. Thank you for saying that because I'll be over here about to. It's a lot, and I'm a single mom. His dad helps, but dad is on the road most of the time. I'm getting ready to go on a whole tour. For the first time, we missed his birthday. Like we were both out of the country for the first time just now, and so it's a lot. My mother used to help me. She passed from cancer a year and a half ago. Right. She lived with us. She was his nanny. She helped a lot. And now it's just Zach and I. So, yes, I have to pick my battles. And that's one of the reasons why he doesn't know how to tie his shoes yet, if I'm being transparent, because I know ultimately it's up to me. he lives with me, you know, and I'm responsible for him solely. He's with me 95% of the time. So after my mother passed, I was like, some things fell to the wayside because mentally I was tapped out. Like I was her caregiver, and mentally I just couldn't do it anymore. And I'm just like, honey, you can wear your favorite shoes every day if you want to, which is his Crocs. So okay, I'm like, wear your Crocs. So he got them in all colors. Okay. But I know Zach is intelligent enough to pick that skill up. I know he can do it. So it's just repetition. I just have to get back on it.
Yeah. No, but you do need to give yourself grace. We were actually talking earlier about caregiving. My father had several strokes in 2020, and so I had to pick up. I carried a small carry-on and went from Chicago to Michigan and didn't know I'd be there for 4 years. But now I'm at least back and forth from Chicago. I'm in Chicago today, so I'm back and forth between Chicago and Detroit like every other week almost now. But it's cool. But you pick your battles. Caregiving is no joke. I am so sorry that your mother didn't make it, but the fact that you took care of Zach and your mom at the same time, God bless you. Okay. Because my one father and having my sister and my mother help, it's a miracle I'm not bald. That I'm not rolling down the street 300 pounds. I actually lost weight, and not because I was eating exercise. Yeah.
I gained
I lost 60 to 70 pounds in the pandemic. But I think honestly, a lot of it was the fact that what happened to him can never happen to me. Like I can't have a stroke. Like I will not let my blood pressure get out of control. I will not let, you know what I mean? So, and because I am a doctor, I was like, you know better. You can't, in the pandemic, because he got sick at the beginning of it, I was eating myself out of house and home and was just blowing up before my own eyes. So, no, so you deserve an award because that is a whole lot.
It is a lot.
Well, thank you. It's a lot because my mother was youthful. She was not ill. She was not overweight or on any medication. She was youthful and vibrant. And my sister and I had never seen her sick. And she, she turned 70. And she died a month after her 70th birthday. She was diagnosed, and about a year later, cancer. It went fast. It was very aggressive. It was very aggressive. It was hiding behind her abdomen because she stayed on top of her doctor's visits and everything, but it was hiding. And it went fast. So it was unexpected. You know what I mean? And it's been a whirlwind, but I'm grateful. I gained weight. I gained 15 pounds when my mom passed away. I'm still working on it because I was just grieving, and I'm still grieving. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But it's been a lot. I mean, but I feel so much better, but I'm still going through it. I don't know if you guys know, but my bandmate passed away almost exactly a year later after my mother. Her sister reminded me that my mother's funeral was the last place I saw her alive, and she was 42. And then their mother and father, their siblings in my group, their mom died a month after she did. And then their father died a month after that. So my bandmate just lost her sister, mother, and father in 3 months. And so all of this has happened within a year. And I'm year and a half. And I'm like, okay, wait. I'm still having to raise Zach, but like, thank God I have a village. Of course, like I said, Dad steps up when he can. My sister, my aunt, like my family. I do have a village. Most of them are out of state. However, they fly to me, they drive to me, and they're supporting me, and I'm grateful because, like you, honey, I would have had I did have about 3 strands of hair, and I'm just gonna be honest. It was a lot, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still healing. I am still healing, but I'm so grateful for these types of conversations because while I try to be a voice for parents, with children on the spectrum, I too need the support, and I too have questions, and I too am still learning. And so I love these conversations. Thank you so much because this is new. He's 15. This is new for me. Right. I don't know what to do with a teenage boy on the spectrum.
Right.
Who, it's pretty limited. It's not like he's Asperger's and can, talk and go on dates and stuff. Like, he's not there yet. You know what I mean? And I don't know if he ever will be, but my focus is to make sure that I'm helping him live his best life and become as independent as he can. And, you know, I have some people like, well, you know, you may need to get ready for him to move out on his own. And, you know, one day you never know, he may want to become, you know, intimate with someone. You got to prepare yourself for all that. I'm like, okay.
There's a lot.
I'm not saying that's not true, but one thing at a time. In my mind, Zach's going to be with me for the rest of his life. In my mind, I'm okay with it. I've accepted that. I don't want him to go live somewhere else. Now that's in my mind. That's today. I might change my mind in 2 years, but today I'm like, no, he's going to be with me. And I've accepted that because to me, I don't know that he can live independently without assistance. Now I know there are facilities I can.
I was just going to say, yeah.
There are, but I'm a black mom. You know most of us want.
But let me tell you what is really kind of funny in that vein. I do ask the teenagers and the parents, so what do you think? Where do you think you're going to live when you're 18, when you're 20, when you're 24? What do you think? What do you think? And it's funny. Yeah, a lot of my black families will say, well, I'm still my mom. And I get it. That's what we do, right? We take care of our family, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would always say just plan and keep him in the plan. Like it's, you know, make him the center and say, hey, where do you want to live? You know, if he says in the moon, how are you going to get there? You know, just like help him kind of that too, so he knows he has that autonomy, you know.
Right.
And it's hard.
I don't need to stunt his growth. I know I don't need to stunt his growth. I do need to let him blossom as much as he can on his own. I know he needs to be more social and be around more of his peers and let him thrive, you know, because he's mostly in here. Outside of school, he is mostly here with me. And I know that being that he is a teenager now, you know, he may want to go be around some of his peers and all that kind of stuff, which there are programs out here in my neighborhood, and I'm so happy about that. So we're looking to enroll him in some of those things where he can become more social, like on the weekends, you know, whether he wants to go or not. I do think it's necessary because, yeah, I got him kind of glued to my hip. But that's not fair. That's not fair to him or to me because he deserves a social life. So do I. I don't really.
And you deserve one too.
That's right, and so do I. Like I work. I do 702. I travel for work. That's my social life. Outside of that, especially since my mother's now deceased, I don't do much anymore. I you know, I have Zach. And that's fine. I'm okay, you know. As long as, you know, I can work, I'm all right. I mean, I would love to, because here's the thing. I'm no spring chicken. I'm in my mid-40s. It's all right. Like, it's not like, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. Do you know what I mean? So I'm okay. But I do want him to experience what I was able to experience in my, you know, young years, which is my parents afforded me the opportunity to live a very fruitful, you know, blessed life. And I want to be able to do the same for him, you know. So I know in that I have to let go a little bit. I know I do.
Well, it sounds like you've done a spectacular job. So
I think so too. I really think so too. And Meelah, please plug and tell us where we can see you or what we need to do. Do we need to go buy a CD? Tell us what we can do to support you.
Okay, so, well, let me start with the book. I wrote a book called Zach's Favorite Socks. It's on Amazon. I was actually able to just showcase it on the Tamron Hall show, so I was super excited about that. So it's available on Amazon.com and also on BarnesandNobles.com. So Zach's Favorite Socks. So you guys can support me in that way. That's ZAC. No H, just ZAC 'S. Yep. And thank you so much. And as far as musically, so wow, we're pretty busy, thank God. So we're going on tour this summer. We're going to be opening for the Queens of R&B tour, which is Escape and SWV co-headlining this tour along with us and Aya and Total, and we're really excited, so excited about that. In the meantime, in between,
we might have to go together.
Yeah.
In Detroit, we might have to do that, Dr. Hooper.
That's right.
Please come through. Gosh, I feel like We were just in Chicago, I feel like. Yes, we were. And then Detroit is probably coming up. But it's okay. The tour is going to go everywhere. But we have some tour. Before the tour, we have the Tom Joyner Cruise is coming up at the end of this month. And then Lovers and Friends, which is Usher's music festival in Las Vegas. We're doing that the top of May. Yep, in Las Vegas. So we get to go home for that. And Houston is also in May. Next week, we're being honored in Atlanta for those that are here in Atlanta. By the Glamoratory. It's empowerment, uplifting women. It's a really cool event to be a part of. But you can go on my Instagram, I guess, and see these things. Sorry for that long-winded answer. That's the short answer.
No, you're okay. You're okay. You are fine.
On my Instagram, on my Facebook, mostly Instagram. I'm putting it. I'm not too excited on Facebook. It's at It's Meelah. All my handles the same. Yep, there we go. Thank you. At It's Meelah.
No problem.
The link is there for ticket sales for the tour, and the link is there for my book, and the link is there for all of my solo music as well. Yep, on my bio on Instagram.
Awesome sauce. And Dr. Hooper, if anyone has questions, where can they reach out to you, or do you have a website that has some great answers or something? Or
so through Henry Ford Center for Autism and Developmental Disabilities, there is a way to ask questions, get in contact with me, any type of questions for I do primary care for children with special health care needs, diagnostic for autism. I live my purpose every single day in the work that I do. I love it. It's meaningful in it. And it honestly, it brings me great joy. So
now where is the Autism Center?
So believe it or not, our diagnostic is virtual. We went virtual like everybody else did in the pandemic. But what we demonstrated, it really is my passion to make sure that we have access to diagnostic services for all children. And so, there are those deserts throughout the country, throughout the state of Michigan, where they just don't have access to diagnostic services. And so by keeping it virtual, we're hitting kids all throughout the state. Regardless. And I love it. I love it. We've expanded the zip code. We're getting all children from various races, different socioeconomic status. I'm keenly aware and making sure that we have equitable care. We do have ABA centers, one in Hamtramck and one in Troy. Okay. So yeah, we're definitely looking to make sure that we can provide care for all kids. So
yes, I hope that you're training the next you up, because my allergist is retiring in May. And when I tell you, I think I almost cried tears.
Yeah. Somebody
who's had asthma and allergies her whole life. And I've only had the one doctor when I was a child, and then one as an adult. But you can't believe me. So because he tried to find somebody like him and it didn't work.
Yeah. But you know what? In truth, things happen for a reason. And my big focus on healthcare transition is the fact that I looked up and one day I'm like, how do I have these late 20 and 30 somethings in my practice? I'm a pediatrician, because I had no place to send them. There wasn't an adult doctor who could care for young folks with special healthcare needs and autism. And so I'm like, okay, something's got to change. So yeah, that's another big issue. We got to train physicians to care for this population. So
yeah, definitely. There's not enough of you, and there's a lot of specialties. There's not a whole lot of people that look like not enough Black people in, and these are specialties that definitely need attention.
100%.
Yeah. Well, and also the numbers are growing within the community. It's it's almost abnormal. It's abnormal if you don't know someone with a child on the spectrum. Right? It's like
very
a nephew, a cousin, a niece, a goddaughter. Somebody knows somebody with a kid on the spectrum. Right. It's like, wow.
100%.
I have a question for you, Doctor. Before we go, I want to ask Doctor if you could break down what are the benefits in your mind for not just my son's age, but just in general for ABA therapy. Do you think ABA is necessary for all children with autism? Or at what point do you think?
Yeah, I would never say autism or ABA is effective for all children. A good ABA program is going to be individualized. So I'm almost going to say it's as good as the person who's administering it. So you have to have a BCBA that's willing to not just do cookie cutter therapy, but partner with the parent to understand what are your priorities. What is your child's priority? What is their age? So someone like Zach's age, you should have a BCBA to talk to him. Say, what are your goals? What do you want to learn? And talk to you. And that person, it's not doing cookie cutter ABA, but it's using the skills of behavior, behavioral science to teach. To teach certain skills, to minimize behaviors that could be interfering, and maybe turning those interfering behaviors into something more functional. There's many ways to do it, but the same program is not appropriate for every single child.
Correct.
And so, and the hard part is there just not as many BCBAs that have the skill to work with adolescents and young adults. They're more and more coming, but there's a lot that could be, done with a good BCBA.
Yeah, I think for me, my dilemma was always, because I inquired about it when Zach was younger, and I got mixed answers from professionals. They would often say like, no, Zach doesn't need it. Zach doesn't need it. But he was much younger. But then I started to notice just some slight behavioral changes from, like, of course, elementary to middle. And I was like, in my mind, he started to me feeling a little more defiant around that transition of elementary to middle school. Could have been because we were stuck in the house. Because, we went from 5th grade to 6th grade on the computer, COVID.
Yeah.
And did 6th grade over at home, which that was another one that took out about 30 strands of hair. But, that was hard. But so I was just always wondering, like, I'm like, maybe he does need to be an ABA. Like, I think I felt like that was a time to maybe just, I don't know, explore that option. Now that he's in high school and getting ready to become a young adult and be in the world, I do think now for sure ABA is a good transition for him. But like you said, individualized for our needs. He and
needs to be exactly. Okay. It can't be where you go in the door and they're like, this is what we're going to offer you. It needs to be, what do you need? And, this is how we could help you achieve this goal.
Okay.
I just think in therapy in general, there's more than one way to do it. And it needs to be done in a way that it's not like pulling you to the end where you're stressed out. Just something as simple as, kids who need help with their balance, they have a coordination issue. You could go to therapy, but I'm the kind of person that, hey, what about horseback riding? That's fun. Who doesn't like being on a horse? But it helps you with your balance. It's a great life skill. I'm always trying to think of like how to accomplish a goal that's a win-win-win for many things. You get you outside, get you with an animal. Exactly. It's a fun activity, and it's and so even with those life skills, looking maybe there's social groups that that can be a focus for all the kids. I don't know. It's finding those therapists that be willing to work with you, meeting your needs.
Yes.
Respecting your culture, respecting your beliefs, and working towards a common goal.
Gotcha. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you, because it's been interesting finding just that perfect ABA center for him in therapy.
It is a challenge, truthfully. That's a goal.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting approach that some of these folks have, but or even it's an interesting requirements. Even like I had one center tell me, well, first you need to go get him re-diagnosed, and I'm like, come again? And so like, we just need to make sure that he's still on the spectrum. And I'm like,
yeah, that's an insurance thing.
There's a waiting list. I'm like, okay. So, I crossed that one out on the list. I was like, okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you for answering that. I was just curious.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. This has been amazing and full of lots of information. So thank you, and everyone. We will see you again next week.